LarryRicker.com, and this is my 10th video on Appium testing. And in this video, I've showed you on last video about troubleshooting, how to troubleshoot the apps. In this video, I've run through the sequence of tests in a loop. I've built a small script here that just loops through, and it sets the test capabilities for each of the apps one at a time, and it looped through and executed the tests on each of the different applications that I need to test. Now the problem's the same, one app on several devices, or if you need to test a sequence of tests on several apps, it's the same. Or if you want to test several apps on several devices, it's still the same problem. What you need to do is loop through the capabilities and execute the tests on each of the capabilities, and the capabilities assign the device and the app that the test needs to be executed on. So in order to merge that and execute the tests over a series of capabilities, what I'm going to do is use a new feature of JUnit 5, which is called parameterized tests in this video, and I'll go through building out the parameterized tests and executing the tests over several apps and also over several devices. So this test just finished, and as you can see, it was built successful. Now if I scroll up, this was executed with this script here, and you see that it ran 2 tests found and 2 tests were successful. And if I scroll up a little further, I can see the logs of exactly what was executed, and I see that this was actually, I need to scroll up a little bit further here. Right in this area here, you see this was the status report for Pro test. So this was a successful test on the status report for Pro. Now, because I executed this in a borne again shell using the script, this line's commented out, and actually I could clean this up just real quick so you could see it better. Oh, actually, let's not do it that way. Let's delete this line and this line, and uncomment this. Okay. You can see that this script, it's rather short, it's probably about 8 lines, and it executes, it goes through each application one at a time, starting with Badwood Names and then Badwood Names Pro, and it just finished up the last one right here, status report for Pro, and executed the tests. It set up the test capabilities and then executed the gradle, and with the parameter -p tag, which chooses the tag in the for the selection at the top of the test. And I chose a few options, --info, to do anything info level or above, meaning like info or silent or just really high level messages, or severe or warning. And anything below that, like debug, would not be displayed. So it sort of turns down the noise a little bit. And then the -- stack overflow, if there was a stack trace, I'm sorry, -- stack trace, it would print out the stack trace in the logs, which are not terribly helpful on Gradle. I did create a POM file to execute this whole test suite in Maven, and I find the error message a little more verbose in Maven, a little more helpful and relevant, because they're these stack trace from my particular test, which is much more helpful than a stack trace of Gradle. So I do jump back and forth between Gradle and Maven, but whether I'm working in Gradle or in Maven, I need to execute this in a loop to execute each test. And because I execute it in each loop, this clean parameter deletes the test results from the prior test. So I no longer have test results from that test. I only have the test results from the last test to execute. So at this point, I only have test results from status report for Pro. So if I jump over to Eclipse and I go down to the build directory, and then I go into test results, and I go to the JUnit platform, and then I do a PF5 on a Windows or a PF5 on a Mac. It will refresh, ideally. That's not cooperating for me. So let's do a control click and then choose refresh. There we go. So now we have errors here. And I've got HTML as well as the XML. Now if I open up the, oh actually those are screenshots, I'm sorry. Those are screenshots, so I could go through those, but in here I've got the XML. If I open that up in Eclipse, it'll show a JUnit report showing that this test passed, and it ran the test settings tab, and it appears that it ran test settings tab twice. That may be a it may be that I didn't rename the error the main method of the test under @test, and I would need to fix that so that the second test shows up as test smoke instead. So that'd be an error on my part. That's easy to fix, and I could demonstrate that in a minute, but just to show you that I only have test results here of 2 tests, and they're only tests on the last application that ran. Now I want to get test results combined of all the tests of all the applications. So in order to do that, I'm going to demonstrate how to do that with parameterized tests. So let's get started. So here's the screenshots just to show you what the screenshots look like. There's a screenshot of the app running on the new project name view. And I guess all these will probably be the same. And then this will be the settings screen. And this is the project selection view. And each of these screenshots probably not most strategically placed because they all pretty much look like empty screens. It'd probably be better to take a screenshot after I populate the field. So just a few things to sort of clean up the test results, get some ideas. So the first one is really easy to fix, so I'm just going to do that right now. That would be in the test smoke. I want to rename the main method of that test so that it doesn't show up as test settings tab. So that's right here, and it says test settings tab, so I'm going to just change that to test smoke. And then that'll show up as a separate test when I do the test results. Now you can also add like @display name here, and it'll print out a nice name for the test, and that will show up in some test reports. And I could repeat that same line. If I copy and paste it, it should automatically bring over the import also. If I copy that over and paste it right here in the other test and call that one the settings tab. So that obviously copied over the import statement because it's not showing up in red. So that was an easy fix. Just want to make sure you catch those quick things when you see them and get those resolved. So let's jump into reworking these tests so that they run the parameterized tests instead of doing an individual test on one app. So what we need is a list of all of the apps here that are going to run. So in order to do this, the easiest way to do it is to replace the word test with parameterized test. and that of course will show up in red. And then either above or below the display name you can add another service annotation for the values that are going to be passed in, and it would be value source. And in here you can give it the name of the actual parameters that you're going to pass into the test to make it unique for each test run. And what those would be the name of the JSON files. So you have to do the import and do the other import. It's the easiest way to do the imports. As long as you make sure you always click on Jupyter and import the proper imports for Jupyter, which is for JUnit 5. There are some other choices there. They might be like testng and stuff, and you want to make sure you pick the right choice, because this functionality also exists in testng, and I know I could use testng to accomplish the same thing, but I'm not using that right now. So let's it existed in testng long before it ever existed in JUnit. It's just kind of a catch-up for JUnit 5, catching up with testng in that regard. So here's the whole list. It doesn't wrap very well. And what we'll need around these is double quotes and commas. Shouldn't be any reason why I can't put these on another line. Well, that would be a reason. I don't know why that happened. That was weird. Okay. So each one of these JSON files, again, if you watch my whole series of videos, you would know that these are all capabilities files. And they're in the exact same format as the capabilities files that are used in Appium desktop. So I decided to build a little framework to read in these JSON files, and in that way it makes it easier. You got to use Appium desktop to get all the attributes of the application and make sure that you get all the accessibility IDs, copy and paste them from Appium desktop into your Java code anyway, as I did in my previous videos. So after you have all the accessibility IDs in your app and you've built out your code in JUnit 5 to execute, then you can just copy over these JSON files, or you can create new JSON files in the directory inside of your project source test resources in this particular layout, and just have all your devices already and all devices and apps configured or ready to start your tests, which should save everybody a lot of time. Anybody that gets the code, and the code's out there, just so you know, it's out there on the web in GitHub. That's HTTPS GitHub https://www.github.com/Larry Ricker. Just click on this project organizer Appium, and you can pull down the source. Okay. Now that's good portion of the work right there to do the parameterized test. This isn't terribly complicated, and then the rest of it is I have to set up my framework to initialize the using the current capabilities file. And the code to do that involves a little change to my framework, and we'll change right here in this code. So you have to add some parameters to the signature of the test method. So these were not ones that were needed before. So there's two new parameters that get passed in. The first one's going to be a string, and that's going to be the capabilities file. So that's going to come in as the first parameter. And then the second parameter is going to be the test info. And then we're going to keep the test reporter as the third attribute. Always import things from Jupyter. There we go. All right, now I have to pull in these settings. So the first setting is going to be first I want to verify that the capabilities file is present. Otherwise, shouldn't really continue the test. So let's just make that assertion. Okay, that'll take care of making the test. Won't go any further if we don't have capabilities coming in. Capabilities is just going to come the first time this method executes. Capabilities is going to be badwithnames.json. The second time it's going to be badwithnames pro.json, and then it's going to be goodwithnames.json, goodwithnames.pro.json, and it'll just go down through that value source and execute the test one time for each of the apps. And then every time it executes, it'll be launching a different app. Now this also would apply if each one of those capabilities files was tied, like if there was a badwithnames iPhone, badwithnames iPhone 6 Plus, iPhone, badwithnames iPad, and you had three separate files for each app, and one of them had the UUID for the iPhone 5S, for the iPhone 6 Plus, and the other for the iPad, then it would execute the test on three separate devices as well as executing it on every single app. So this framework is just going to sort of expand itself, and I'm going to do that and then execute it in Suite. And you're probably thinking, well, I don't have enough ports on my machine here, and you know, it would be really great if you had one of those trash cans from Apple with those big huge computers with like 6 USB ports on the back, and then you could plug all your devices in. I don't have that either, so I went out and bought a hub here, and I'm going to have a USB hub, and then I'm going to daisy chain that out into my devices and run them on those devices that way. Might need to buy some more cords too, but let's just take one thing at a time. So the next thing we want to do is I want to just write out a message to the test reporter, and that way I know exactly which app the test is running for, and that way, well, that'll be help. If one of them fails, I'll know which app specifically failed or on which device. So we'll just do a test report, publish entry, and this takes 2 parameters, a key and a value, or you can do the map version. And then I'm going to put in info.displayname, and that'll pull in the display name of the settings tab just above from the annotation above. And then for the value, I'm going to put in environment. No, actually, I'm going to put in environment. I'm going to put in the capabilities under test, and then I'll just put in that parameter capabilities. So I'll just have the name of the JSON file that's being tested right now. And then I also want to put out, I want to set a property, and this is a Java property, and that Java property is going to be picked up in my framework and then be used to configure the driver to the particular capabilities that I need. So we'll do that now. And that's just a one-liner, system.set property. And then I called it test capability. And how did I spell it? Let's go to driver and see. It's always best to just copy and paste. Now I edit my batch file, and that batch file is working too. It's supposed to be right here. Oh, I'm sorry. It's in the load method. Here it is, test capabilities. Let's copy that name. We'll go back to here and just name A. And then I'm just going to put in the capability. Make sure I spell it the same way. Actually, it is capabilities, and it is plural because it is multiple capabilities. It's a file containing capabilities, so that kind of makes sense. And it wouldn't be bad to, well, I could do a get property. Last time I did this, I printed that out, but I don't know if it's really necessary this time because I know this works. So now let's go over to app load. Now I'm getting the override capabilities from the system get environment, and if if override capabilities not equal to null, then I want to set the override capabilities. No, actually, if it's equal to null. Lo siento. Okay, override capabilities is equal to system.getProperty and get the one key get property with the same name, test capabilities. This will keep my script working. So if it's, and I misspelled something here, so let's fix that real quick. Always better to copy and paste than try to type something as complicated as capabilities. Okay. Then, so if I pass it in on the script's setting an environmental variable, and that works in Windows or on the Mac. And on the Mac, you set the environmental variable with export test capabilities equal badwithnames.json. But if you are on a Windows computer, you would do set space test capabilities, test underscore capabilities equal, and then say project organizer pro.json. So it's I just chose two different example apps in that example, but you basically set those environmental variables, and whether it's Windows or a Mac or Linux, it'll pull that environment variable in through system.getEnvironment. Now, system properties are different, and those are Java properties. And the reason I'm using get property here is because you can do, there's a getter and a setter for the system property. So I can set the properties over in the other file, in the test, and I can do the get property here. So just kind of a way of passing that information around the Java app, and it works. So that is that. And now, the interesting thing about doing this is you also have to do the set values. You on the before each and the after each, you don't have to add the parameterized test or the value source, but what you do have to do is add the two attributes that you're passing in, and those are string capabilities and the test info. And if the test reporter is not already there, that needs to be. So I'm just going to copy all three. So I'll add that here to the before each method, doesn't have any, and the after each method. And while I'm on a roll, I'm just going to go over to the other test that I have, the test smoke. I'm going to do the exact same thing. So on the main method here, I'm going to add these attributes. And then on the before each and the after each, I'm also going to add those attributes. And then I'm going to copy over the annotation as well. Now, if I wanted to reduce the code maintenance and not have to copy and paste this list, I will, probably in the future, make that a method that returns all these JSON names. But for now, I'm just going to do it this way. So I'll copy these lines here. Actually, I'm going to grab the display name, and I'm going to add a display name to that test as well. Actually, no, I already did. So yes, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to copy this. Okay. And the test has to go. And it did pull in the imports. So now we are ready to execute, if memory serves me right, and I've done everything necessary. So pretty easy change. And before I go too crazy about how great that was, let's just run it and see how it goes. Okay, so now I don't need to run the script, because the script would run all the tests over and over and over and over again. So I just have to run the test sequence one time. So the command for that, if I do it in Maven, the command is maven And now it's different for Maven than it is for Gradle. It's a minus P on Maven, and it would be test equal, and then I would give it the name of the test that I'm going to execute. I'm going to do just the settings tab for now, just to test this out, and then just execute one test. It'll be a little quicker. The other test is a little more extensive. And then for Maven, the commands, it has different tasks. So clean's the same, and then you do a clean, and then instead of a build, it's a compile. And you can also do an install if you want. That'll put a jar into your local Maven repository. I'm just going to do a compile, or you can do a test, which is the same. So if you do a clean test, that's the same as Gradle. So those tasks are the same. So if you just use those two, it's kind of easy. So I'm going to do Maven. I could do the Gradle one next if this doesn't work, just to show the other way. Okay, so we get a failure. Okay, so if you want a full stack trace, you do a -e switch, which would be helpful. Let's see if we have any information about why it failed. Okay, value success, value null. Actually, no, it started here. Download, 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 and then could not resolve dependencies for project. Okay, so it's having a little trouble with Maven Central. I got to work that out on my POM file. So let's, I'll show you the Gradle command. That's Gradle minus, now it's different. It's a P instead of a D. One's a parameter, and the other one is like a system environment variable. So that's a -P, and then I want to set the tab equal to iOS, which is the no, not tab, tag, and that's how let me show you where the tag is. That's right at the top of the class right here. So this one has two tags. It has iOS and smoke. So I'm going to choose the iOS tag, and it'll execute both tests because this one also has iOS, but it doesn't have smoke. Now if I just did smoke, it would just execute the one test, which is smoke. So that being said, okay, so I'm doing tag iOS, and then the command I don't want to choose a particular, well actually I do. I want to choose one test. So the command for that is -P, and then it's test class equal test settings tab, and then just a clean test. Now this command will probably not work for you right out of the box unless you copy my build.gradle file. So I'd say go copy my build.gradle file because it pulls in those two parameters if you want to be able to not update your Gradle file every time you execute a test to choose the tags or the test that's under test, and it'll work out better for you. Well, it works out better for me. I used to modify the Gradle file all the time. It was a bit much. Okay, let's get back to the main screen here. Driver.destroy. I need to destroy the driver. And that way, it'll pick up the new app name. Let's just take a peek at destroy, make sure I coded that. Destroy. Where are you? Destroy. Okay. Yeah, that'll wipe out the driver. And that should allow it to create a new driver because it was doing a singleton get, and the singleton was not it's not picking up the new app name on each run. So I'll need to make that change to this and also to my smoke test, which I'm not executing yet, but I'll just want to be thorough. Test after each, do a driver dot destroy. And that should allow it to pick up, if you're using my framework, should allow it to pick up the setting. If you're not using my framework, you could probably do probably just set your driver to null, something along those lines. Let's do a save all. Okay, so I think we're ready to rerun this, and it's not finished running. So I'm not going to wait. Let's just kill that and start over. Now it's doing. Okay. By printing out that line that shows the capabilities. Oops. That probably is somewhere. Is there a find? No, there isn't. Okay. I'll kill this and start over. Let's see if it picks up the right setting. So we'll kill that. I'm just going to reset that. Okay, it stopped. Nope, it didn't stop. It's going to keep running. Let's wait for that finish. Okay, I'll just leave it on the main page. Let's run that again. Again, the command gradle -p tags. That's a tag to iOS. So that's going to identify the tests that are iOS, and then it's going to pull in one test class to execute test settings tab clean test. It's only the settings tab test, so I'm not going through the smoke test. If this is working good, I'll run the smoke test overnight and let that run to completion, and then look at the test results in the morning. One of two things is going to happen. I'm either going to get a null pointer exception after it destroys that driver and it's unable to recreate it, or it's going to switch to the next app when it gets the next app and just run the next app. One of those two things. Okay, so the first test is bad with names. That one's fine. That worked last time. Let's see what the second test is. Testing the share capability right there. Sharing the app with another person. Myself. Oh, I put this in the wrong method. I see the problem. Okay. I put it into the tear down after class to destroy the driver. And that's not going to work. So, what I need to do is do it in the after each. Because we need to destroy the driver after each run. And I'm going to put this code back where I had it. If it doesn't work, I'm going to put it here. And being as I messed up one test, let's see if I messed up the other one. That one I did correctly, driver after each. So if I was testing the smoke test, it would be working properly. Maybe. Okay, this is obviously not working. Let's go back here. Let's see if, always check to make sure you save all your files. Use the save all option. Now I'm just going to jump over to this, kill it, and rerun it. Okay, now we're loading a different app. Okay, this is working. I have to modify the driver class a little bit, so I'm going to delete that code. That's not necessary anymore. That worked just fine for MSIE, Internet Explorer driver, and Selenium. But this is Appium, and this seems to work just setting it to a null. So we'll go with that. Okay, so now we've got a test that runs across multiple apps, and if there were more capabilities files for different devices, I can have multiple devices plugged in here and run it across multiple devices as well. So I'm going to quit this for now and then kick it off to run overnight, and then I'll show you the aggregated report in the morning. Okay, so this test ran successfully overnight, and as you can see, the test results are right here, and it ran 28 tests, and 16 were successful, and 12 tests failed. So if we go to the disk here in Finder, here we go. Okay, in here, here are test results. Here's your screenshots, quite a few screenshots. And then here's the XML file with the test results. And I have to refresh. Okay, so this is in Eclipse. You can see the test results. So as I rename the smoke test to test smoke, and you see the test results here. It ran not always successfully, and test settings tab also ran across 14 apps. So it did fail on occasion with session not created exception. Okay. No HTTP response exception. Okay, so this means that Appium died, the main Appium, so it failed before it completed all the apps. But as you can see, the main thing is that all the tests aggregated into one single test report.
I've been kind of avoiding it, but I think I need to install Jenkins and run this in Jenkins and get a HTML test reporter because the output is much prettier. But I can go through this in Eclipse and look at the test results. Okay, so basically Appium failed to run. Seems like consistently failed to run. So it just kind of runs for a while and then dies. And I've seen this before on a smaller scale. Now I've got it running on a larger scale. And I noticed last night that it was like it was failing and then it was trying to start up again. And I guess it didn't succeed in starting up again. Yeah. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to run this test again and see if I get better test results. Now the same test results here are in XML format. And this is inside of Xcode because that's the default display on this machine for XML files. Could have opened these up in a web browser as well. And you can see the test results here. Okay, so here you see, and this would look better on Jenkins, but you see the output, and it says bad with names, and that looks like a successful test. Bad with names Pro, again looks like a successful test. And then if we scroll down here, got good with names Pro, and we got a stack trace, so that's an unsuccessful test. And this stack trace right here, good. All right, so I can zoom in on that and see unable to create remote session. So that is an Appium startups failure. Here's some more successful tests. PMIS passed. Progress report passed. Progress report pro passed. Project info passed. Project info pro passed. Got a failure here. No response. Again, Appium failed to launch. So basically Appium died and didn't complete the test. So operation was a success. We lost the patient, but okay, we've got a successful test of all the apps, and we'll have to run it again. And looks like the failures aren't giving me any meaningful failures about my app. They're just Appium died. So I'm going to have to rerun this. And it looks like every failure is the same. No issues with my app, just an issue with Appium dying. Yeah. Okay, so I'll rerun this and look over the test results. Okay, so this just ran all day, and now I'm looking at the test results, and we've got 28 tests started, so we are getting all the tests executed. 13 tests were successful, 15 failed, and so it's not going 100% yet. And let's just evaluate that a little closer. We'll launch up Eclipse and take a look at the test results. So So if this is Eclipse, we'll go in a little deeper, look at the test results in Eclipse. So we've got 28 tests that executed, 15 had errors. The pattern looks a little different than earlier this morning. So we've got a null pointer exception. So that test didn't start in the right place. It looked like it was trying to start on the settings tab and it couldn't find it. Let's see what this one's doing. Session not created exception, so that looks like an Appium issue, again with PMIS Pro. Trying to look for a pattern to see, and Jenkins was really good for that, and I gotta really just get Jenkins. I'll do another video, set up Jenkins on the video, and it keeps cumulative test results for each test individually, so you can just click on each test and say, oh, well, this test passed the last 3 times and then it failed once. That's not too big an issue. Or this test has failed the last 7 times consistently. Okay, we probably have an issue here. And that's really helpful. Yeah, so these all look like failure to start. As they say, failure to launch. Okay, now that concludes this video. We're able to put together a parameterized test using JUnit 5 and execute all the tests, the 2 tests, across 14 separate applications and generate one test report with them all merged together. Mission accomplished.